The moment you stop searching for strength outside yourself, you find the infinite power that was always within. This is not philosophy. This is not theory. This is the truth that separates those who truly understand from those who remain forever seeking. What if I told you that everything you believe about power is backwards? What if the strongest person in the room is not the one who speaks loudest, but the one who speaks least? What if true strength has nothing to do with what you can control, and everything to do with what you can let go? Look around you. Watch the people who seem to have it all together, the ones pushing hardest, the ones fighting every battle, the ones proving themselves at every turn. They appear strong, don't they? But watch their eyes. See the tension in their shoulders. Notice how they cannot sit still, cannot be quiet, cannot simply be. This is the great deception of our time. We have been taught that strength comes from accumulation, more achievements, more recognition, more control over circumstances, more, always more. And so we exhaust ourselves in pursuit of a power that retreats the moment we grasp for it. The truth is simpler than you think. The truth is this: real power has never been about what you can force into submission. Real power is about what remains unshakable when everything else falls away. Most people live their entire lives trying to convince the world of their worth. They build elaborate personas. They collect victories like trophies. They speak loudly to drown out the quiet inside that whispers they are not enough. But you can choose differently. You can stop performing and start being. The ancient masters knew something we have forgotten. They understood that the person who conquers 1,000 enemies in battle is not as powerful as the person who conquers themselves. They knew that the mountain does not prove its strength by moving. It proves its strength by remaining utterly still while storms rage around it. This is your invitation. Not to become something you are not, but to remember what you have always been. Not to gain new power, but to recognize the power that has never left you. You see, the mind has played a trick on you. It has convinced you that you are weak, that you need external validation, that your worth depends on circumstances beyond your control. But the mind is not your master. The mind is your tool, and like any tool, it serves you best when you know how to use it properly. Think of a tree in winter, stripped of its leaves, appearing lifeless, yet containing within its core all the power it needs to bloom again. The tree does not panic. The tree does not question its worth. The tree knows that what appears to be emptiness is actually fullness waiting to express itself. This is your true nature. Not the thoughts that race through your head, not the emotions that rise and fall like waves, not the circumstances that seem to define you. Your true nature is the awareness that observes all of these things without being disturbed by them. But here is where most people get lost. They confuse stillness with weakness. They mistake gentleness for passivity. They believe that if they are not constantly pushing, they will be left behind. This is the great misunderstanding that keeps them trapped in endless struggle. The sage does not attempt anything very big, and thus achieves greatness. The warrior who knows when not to fight wins every battle. The leader who does not need to prove their authority commands the deepest respect. Consider the bamboo. When fierce winds come, the mighty oak stands rigid and breaks. But the bamboo bends, flows with the wind, and when the storm passes, it stands taller than before. This is not surrender. This is wisdom. This is strength that understands its own nature. You have been taught to fear your own power. You have been convinced that if you truly stepped into who you are, you would be too much for the world to handle. So you make yourself small. You dim your light. You speak softly of your dreams and loudly of your fears. But what if the world needs exactly what you have to offer? What if your so-called weaknesses are actually your greatest strengths in disguise? What if the very thing you are trying to fix about yourself is the key to your transformation? The path of inner strength is not about becoming someone else. It is about stripping away everything that is not authentically you. It is about removing the layers of conditioning, expectation, and fear until only truth remains. Most people are terrified of silence. They fill every moment with noise, with distraction, with busyness. They run from themselves as if they were running from an enemy. But you can choose to be different. You can choose to sit in the quiet and listen to what it has to teach you. In stillness, you discover that you are not your thoughts. Thoughts come and go like clouds across the sky, but you are the sky itself. Vast, unchanging, infinite. In stillness, you realize that you are not your emotions. Emotions rise and fall like waves on the ocean, but you are the ocean itself. Deep, powerful, eternal. This is not a concept to understand. This is a reality to experience. Right now, as you hear these words, notice the awareness that is listening. Notice the consciousness that is taking in this information. That awareness, that consciousness, is not separate from you. It is you, the real you, the you that has always been there, watching, waiting, knowing, but the mind will resist this truth. The mind has invested so much energy in convincing you that you are limited, that you need fixing, that you are not enough. The mind will create doubt. It will create distraction. It will create drama to pull you back into the old patterns. This is where most people give up. They get a taste of their true power and then retreat because it feels too foreign, too dangerous, too different from what they have always known. But you can choose to stay. You can choose to breathe through the discomfort and allow the transformation to unfold. The process is simple, but not easy. It requires you to question everything you have been told about yourself. It requires you to sit with uncertainty. It requires you to trust in something that cannot be measured or quantified or proven to others. Think of a seed buried in dark soil. From the outside, nothing appears to be happening, but beneath the surface, incredible transformation is taking place. The seed is not trying to become something it is not. It is simply allowing its true nature to express itself. This is what inner strength looks like, not the desperate grasping for control, but the quiet confidence that comes from knowing who you are. Not the loud proclamation of your worth, but the subtle presence that speaks louder than words. Not the constant doing, but the profound being that changes everything simply by existing. The ancient masters called this the pathless path. It is not a destination you reach, but a way of being you embody. It is not something you achieve, but something you remember. It is not new knowledge, but ancient wisdom, awakening within you. You see, the power you seek has never been missing. It has been covered over by layers of conditioning, buried beneath years of doubt, hidden behind masks of who you think you should be. But it is there. It has always been there, waiting for you to stop looking outside and start looking within. The moment you truly understand this, everything changes. Not because the world suddenly becomes different, but because you see it with new eyes. The same challenges exist, but you meet them from a different place. The same people surround you, but you interact with them from a different depth. The same circumstances arise, but you respond from a different wisdom. This is the paradox of power. The less you need it, the more you have it. The less you seek it, the more it seeks you. The less you try to prove it, the more it proves itself through you. And so your training begins. Not in some distant monastery or hidden cave,
but right here, right now, in the midst of your ordinary life. Every moment becomes a chance to practice. Every interaction becomes an opportunity to remember who you truly are. Every challenge becomes a doorway to deeper understanding. The path is not about perfection, it is about presence. It is not about having all the answers. It is about being comfortable with the questions. It is not about never falling down. It is about knowing how to get back up with grace.
As you walk this path, you will notice that your relationship with everything begins to shift. Problems that once seemed overwhelming become manageable. People who once triggered you become teachers. Circumstances that once controlled you become opportunities for growth. This is not because you have gained some magical power over the external world. This is because you have remembered your true relationship with it. You are not separate from life. You are life itself expressing through this unique form in this unique moment for this unique purpose. The warrior within you is awakening, not the warrior who fights against life, but the warrior who flows with it. Not the warrior who conquers others, but the warrior who has conquered the only enemy that ever truly existed. The illusion of separation from your own power. This awakening cannot be rushed. It cannot be forced. It can only be allowed. Like the dawn breaking over a mountain peak, it happens in its own time, in its own way, according to its own wisdom. But make no mistake, this is not a passive process. It requires your full participation. It requires your willingness to let go of who you think you are to discover who you actually are. It requires your courage to stand in your truth even when the world tries to convince you otherwise. The choice is yours. You can continue to seek power in all the wrong places, exhausting yourself in pursuit of something that will never satisfy. Or you can turn inward and begin the only journey that truly matters, the journey home to yourself. Everything else follows from this decision. Everything else flows from this understanding. Everything else builds upon this foundation. The paradox of power is not a riddle to solve but a truth to live. And that living begins now. Now that you understand the paradox, the real work begins. The work of transformation. The work of becoming who you truly are. This is not about learning new techniques. This is about unlearning old patterns that no longer serve you. Watch what happens when someone cuts you off in traffic. Notice the instant reaction, the surge of anger, the rush of thoughts, the tightening in your chest. Most people believe this is natural. They believe this is just how life works. Someone does something. You react, cause and effect. But what if I told you this is the greatest lie you have ever believed? Between every stimulus and every response there exists a space. In that space lies your freedom. In that space lies your power. In that space lies the difference between living as a slave to circumstance and living as a master of your own experience. The automatic mind operates like a machine. Input, process, output. No consciousness, no choice, no awareness. Just endless repetition of the same patterns, the same reactions, the same results. The automatic mind is efficient, but it is not intelligent. It is fast, but it is not wise. Most people live their entire lives in this automatic state. They wake up to an alarm and immediately reach for their phone. They feel stressed and immediately reach for coffee. They encounter conflict and immediately reach for defense. They are not living. They are being lived by their conditioning. But you can choose something different. You can choose to step into the space between stimulus and response. You can choose to breathe before you react. You can choose to observe before you judge.
You can choose to understand before you condemn. This is the first mastery, the mastery of response over reaction. The difference is not subtle. It is the difference between being a wave tossed by every wind and being the ocean itself, unmoved by surface disturbances. When you react, you give your power away. You become a victim of circumstances. You become controlled by whatever happens to you. But when you respond, you reclaim your power. You become the creator of your experience. You become the author of your own story. The master swordsman does not draw his blade at the first sign of conflict. He assesses, he breathes, he finds the center of stillness within himself, and from that center he acts with precision, with purpose, with power. That comes not from force but from alignment with truth. This is what it means to respond rather than react. This is what it means to be present rather than automatic. This is what it means to be conscious rather than unconscious. But how do you cultivate this awareness? How do you create this space? How do you break free from decades of conditioning that happen faster than thought? The answer is simpler than you think. The answer is always available to you. The answer is your breath. Your breath is the bridge between your conscious mind and your unconscious body. Your breath is the doorway between automatic reaction and conscious response. Your breath is the key that unlocks the space where transformation happens. Right now, notice your breathing. Do not change it. Just notice it. Is it shallow or full? Is it fast or slow? Is it smooth or irregular? Most people go through their entire day without ever noticing their breath. They breathe just enough to survive, never enough to thrive. But your breath reveals everything about your inner state. When you are anxious, your breath becomes shallow and quick. When you are angry, your breath becomes tight and forceful. When you are peaceful, your breath becomes slow and natural. Your breath is the mirror of your consciousness. The ancient masters understood this. They knew that he who controls his breath controls his mind. They knew that he who controls his mind controls his destiny. They knew that transformation begins with the simple act of conscious breathing. When you feel the familiar surge of reaction rising within you, breathe. When you feel the old patterns trying to take control, breathe. When you feel overwhelmed by circumstances, breathe. Not because breathing will make everything perfect, but because breathing will give you the space to choose your response. One conscious breath creates a gap in the automatic pattern. 3 conscious breaths create a choice. 10 conscious breaths create transformation. This is not theory. This is practice. This is the way. But the mind will resist this simplicity. The mind wants complexity. The mind wants strategies and techniques and systems. The mind wants to make this harder than it is because the mind fears its own solution. The mind knows that in the space of conscious breathing, its dominance ends. So the mind will tell you that breathing is too simple, that real transformation requires more effort, that you need to read more books, attend more seminars, learn more methods. But the masters knew better. They knew that the most profound truths are often the simplest ones. The tree does not struggle to grow. It simply breathes through its leaves, draws nutrients from the earth and reaches toward the sun. The river does not struggle to flow. It simply follows the path of least resistance, carving canyons through solid rock with nothing but persistence and time. This is the way of inner mastery. Not through force but through flow, not through struggling but through surrendering, not through pushing but through allowing. As you practice this conscious breathing, you begin to notice something remarkable. The thoughts that once seemed so urgent become less compelling. The emotions that once seemed so overwhelming become manageable. The circumstances that once seemed so controlling become workable. You begin to realize that you are not your thoughts. Thoughts are simply mental weather patterns passing through the sky of your consciousness. Sometimes stormy, sometimes clear, but always temporary. You are the sky itself, vast and unchanging, unaffected by whatever passes through. You begin to realize that you are not your emotions. Emotions are energy in motion, waves on the ocean of your being, sometimes turbulent, sometimes calm, but always flowing. You are the ocean itself, infinite and eternal, containing all movements without being disturbed by them. You begin to realize that you are not your circumstances. Circumstances are the external conditions of your life, the weather outside your house, sometimes challenging, sometimes favorable, but always changing. You are the house itself, solid and stable, providing shelter, regardless of what storms may come.
This realization is not intellectual. It is experiential. It happens not through thinking but through being. It happens not through understanding but through embodying. It happens not through learning but through remembering. The observer within you awakens. The witness consciousness that has always been there, watching, waiting. This is your true self, not the personality that changes with circumstance. Not the ego that seeks validation, not the mind that creates stories, but the pure awareness that remains constant through all changes. From this place of witness consciousness, you begin to see life differently. Problems become opportunities. Obstacles become teachers. Enemies become mirrors, showing you parts of yourself you have not yet integrated. The person who once triggered your anger now triggers your compassion. The situation that once caused your fear now calls forth your courage. The challenge that once overwhelmed you now invites your creativity. This is not because you have become weak or passive. This is because you have become strong in a way that most people never understand. You have become strong enough to remain centered in the storm. Strong enough to stay present when everything pulls you toward reaction. Strong enough to respond from wisdom rather than impulse. Think of the mountain again. When storms rage around its peak, the mountain does not fight the wind. It does not resist the rain. It simply remains itself, rooted in the earth, reaching toward the sky, unmoved by whatever passes by. This is the quality of presence you are cultivating. Not the presence that requires perfect conditions, but the presence that remains stable regardless of conditions. Not the presence that needs everything to be quiet, but the presence that finds silence even in the midst of noise. As you continue to practice this way of being, you notice that your relationship with time changes. You are no longer constantly rushing toward the future or dwelling in the past. You begin to inhabit the present moment more fully, more completely, more authentically. In the present moment there are no problems. There are only situations to be met with awareness. In the present moment there is no lack. There is only the fullness of what is. In the present moment there is no separation. There is only the unity of being. This is where true power resides. Not in your ability to control what happens, but in your ability to remain present with whatever happens. Not in your capacity to force outcomes, but in your willingness to meet each moment with openness and curiosity. The ancient warriors understood this. They trained not just their bodies but their minds. They cultivated not just physical strength but mental clarity. They developed not just fighting skills, but the wisdom to know when fighting was unnecessary. The greatest victories were won without drawing a sword. The strongest warriors were those who conquered their own reactivity. The most powerful leaders were those who led by example, not by force. This is the mastery you are cultivating. Not mastery over others, but mastery over yourself. Not control of external circumstances, but freedom from the need to control. Not power over the world, but alignment with the power that moves the world. Each moment of conscious breathing is a step on this path. Each time you choose response over reaction, you strengthen this muscle of awareness. Each time you remain present instead of getting lost in mental stories, you deepen this capacity for being. The path is not linear. There will be days when you forget everything you have learned. There will be moments when you react instead of respond. There will be times when you lose yourself in the old patterns. This is not failure. This is learning. This is the way. The master is not the one who never falls. The master is the one who falls and gets up with grace. The sage is not the one who never makes mistakes. The sage is the one who learns from every mistake and grows stronger. Your inner landscape begins to transform. Where there was once chaos, there is now order. Where there was once reactivity, there is now responsiveness. Where there was once automatic behavior, there is now conscious choice. This transformation radiates outward. Your relationships begin to change. Your work begins to change. Your entire experience of life begins to change. Not because you are forcing change, but because you are embodying a different way of being. People notice something different about you, though they may not be able to name it. There is a quality of presence about you that was not there before. A stillness that speaks louder than words. A strength that needs no demonstration. This is the fruit of inner mastery. This is the result of choosing consciousness over unconsciousness, response over reaction, presence over absence. This is what it means to build your inner strength, so that everything else can follow naturally from that foundation. The way is clear before you, the path is open. The only question remaining is whether you will walk it, whether you will choose the way of inner mastery or continue living at the mercy of automatic patterns. The choice, as always, is yours. But know this: every moment you delay is another moment of living beneath your potential. Every breath you take unconsciously is another opportunity for transformation that passes unused. Every reaction you allow to control you is another moment of giving your power away. The time for half measures is over. The time for excuses is finished. The time for transformation is now. Your inner strength awaits your recognition. Your true power awaits your embodiment. Your authentic self awaits your return home. Now comes the real test. Not the understanding of these principles in quiet moments, but the living of them when life becomes demanding. Not the practice of presence when everything is peaceful, but the embodiment of consciousness when chaos surrounds you. This is where most people fail. They have moments of clarity, glimpses of their true power, experiences of inner peace. But then Monday morning arrives. The bills need paying. The boss creates pressure. The children demand attention. The spouse requires support. And suddenly, all that wisdom seems to vanish like morning mist. But what if this is exactly where your strength is meant to shine? What if the noise and chaos of ordinary life is not the enemy of your practice, but the perfect training ground for your mastery? The mountain does not choose which storms to face. It faces them all with the same unwavering presence. The river does not decide which obstacles to flow around. It meets each rock, each bend, each challenge with the same fluid grace. This is the quality you must cultivate, meeting every moment of life with the same inner stability. When your boss criticizes your work, instead of defending or attacking, you breathe. You feel the familiar tightness wanting to rise in your chest. You notice the mind wanting to create stories about fairness and respect. But you do not become these reactions. You witness them. You allow them to pass through you, like clouds through sky. From this space of awareness you respond, not from wounded ego, but from centered strength. Your remains calm. Your posture remains open. Your energy remains grounded. You speak truth without aggression. You maintain boundaries without building walls. You protect your peace without attacking others. This is not weakness. This is power in its purest form.
Power that does not need to prove itself. Power that does not need to dominate. Power that influences through presence, not through force. Watch how people respond to this quality in you. They expect resistance and find acceptance. They expect defensiveness and find openness. They expect weakness and find strength. They cannot understand or manipulate. This confuses them. This disarms them. This transforms them. Your child throws a tantrum in the grocery store. Everyone is watching. The old you would have reacted from embarrassment, from frustration, from the need to appear in control. But the new you breathe. You see the child's overwhelm. You feel your own triggered emotions without becoming them. You respond from compassion, not reaction.
You kneel down to their level. Your remains gentle but firm. Your presence becomes an anchor in their storm. You do not try to stop their emotion. You simply stay present with it. And in your presence, their chaos begins to settle. Not because you forced it to, but because you provided a container of peace for it to exist within. This is how inner strength works in the world. It does not fight against chaos. It provides stability within chaos. It does not eliminate storms. It remains unmoved by storms. It does not control outcomes. It influences them through the quality of being you bring to each moment. Your marriage faces a difficult conversation. Old patterns want to emerge. The urge to be right. The need to defend your position. The desire to make your partner wrong so you can feel better about yourself. But you have learned a different way. You speak from your truth without attacking theirs. You listen with genuine curiosity instead of preparing your defense. You stay present with the discomfort of not knowing how things will resolve. You trust the process of honest communication more than the outcome of getting your way. This quality of presence transforms conflict into connection. It turns arguments into understanding. It changes problems into opportunities for greater intimacy. Not because you become weak or passive, but because you become strong enough to remain open when everything in you wants to close. The way you walk through the world begins to change. There is a different quality to your movements, a different rhythm to your speech, a different energy in your presence. People notice even if they cannot name what they are noticing. Salespeople find it harder to pressure you. Manipulative people find fewer hooks to grab onto. Drama seems to swirl around you without pulling you in. This is not because you have become cold or distant. This is because you have become centered in a way that does not need external validation or control. Your morning becomes different. Instead of rushing immediately into activity, you create space for stillness. Not because you have to, but because you want to. Not because someone told you to meditate, but because you have tasted the peace that comes from conscious presence. You sit quietly for a few minutes, you breathe consciously. You feel your body, you notice your thoughts without getting caught in them. You set an intention for how you want to show up in the world today. Not what you want to achieve, but who you want to be. This is not a ritual you perform. This is a connection you remember. A remembering of who you are beneath all the roles and responsibilities and expectations. A returning to the source of your strength before you pour yourself out into the world. Your evening becomes different too. Instead of collapsing into distraction or numbing entertainment, you create space for reflection. You review your day not with judgment but with curiosity. Where did you remember your true nature? Where did you forget it? What can you learn from both? This is not self-criticism. This is self-awareness. This is the gentle attention a gardener gives to their plants. Noticing what needs more water, what needs more sun, what needs to be pruned so new growth can emerge. You begin to see patterns in your life with new clarity. The same types of situations that used to trigger you repeatedly. The same kinds of people who used to push your buttons. The same sorts of challenges that used to overwhelm you. But now you meet them differently. Where you once saw enemies, you now see teachers. Where you once saw obstacles, you now see opportunities for practice. Where you once saw problems, you now see invitations to grow stronger. This shift in perception changes everything. The difficult person at work becomes your patience teacher. The challenging financial situation becomes your creativity teacher. The health scare becomes your presence teacher. Life stops happening to you and starts happening for you. But this transformation does not happen overnight. It unfolds gradually, like a flower opening to the sun. Some days you remember your strength clearly. Other days you forget and fall back into old patterns. This is natural. This is part of the process. This is how mastery develops. The key is not to judge yourself for the forgetting but to celebrate the remembering. Not to criticize yourself for falling back but to appreciate how quickly you can return to center. Not to expect perfection but to honor progress. Each time you choose response over reaction, you strengthen this muscle of consciousness. Each time you remain present instead of getting lost in mental stories, you deepen this capacity for being. Each time you act from your center instead of your conditioning, you become more authentically yourself. Your work begins to reflect this inner transformation. You approach tasks with greater focus and less stress. You handle pressure with more grace and less overwhelm. You lead others through inspiration rather than intimidation. You create value through presence, not just productivity. People begin to seek your opinion not because you have all the answers but because you have a quality of listening that helps them find their own answers. They come to you not because you fix their problems but because you hold space for them to discover their own solutions. This is the influence of inner strength. It does not push or pull. It does not demand or manipulate. It simply exists with such clarity and stability that others are naturally drawn to its peace. Your health begins to reflect this inner harmony. Stress-related symptoms diminish. Sleep becomes more restful. Energy increases naturally. This is not because you are doing more self-care activities, though you may be. This is because you are living from a place of alignment rather than resistance. When you are not constantly fighting against life, your body can relax. When you are not always preparing for the next crisis, your nervous system can restore itself. When you are not carrying the weight of everyone else's expectations, your spirit can soar. The relationships in your life begin to shift. Some people uncomfortable with your new stability may drift away. Others drawn to your authenticity may come closer. This is natural. This is healthy. This is necessary. You no longer need to be everything to everyone. You no longer need to sacrifice yourself to keep others comfortable. You no longer need to hide your light so others do not feel diminished by it. You begin to trust that the right people will appreciate your authenticity and the wrong people will remove themselves from your life. You begin to understand that trying to please everyone is impossible and unnecessary. You begin to realize that your job is not to make others happy but to be true to yourself. This does not make you selfish. This makes you authentic. This does not make you uncaring. This makes you genuinely caring rather than compulsively caring. This does not make you isolated. This makes you available for real connection rather than codependent attachment. The money in your life begins to flow differently. Not because you are trying to attract wealth, but because you are no longer repelling it through fear and scarcity thinking.
Not because you are working harder, but because you are working smarter. Not because you are being greedy, but because you are being generous with your true gifts. You offer value from your authentic strengths rather than from what you think others want. You price your services based on their true worth rather than your insecurities. You make decisions from abundance consciousness rather than fear consciousness. This shift in relationship with money reflects your shift in relationship with yourself. When you know your worth, you no longer undervalue your contributions. When you trust your abilities, you no longer undercharge for your services. When you believe in your value, you no longer accept less than you deserve. But perhaps the most profound change is in your relationship with time. You no longer feel like you are racing against the clock or running out of opportunities. You begin to inhabit each moment more fully, more completely, more presently. You realize that time is not something you have but something you are. You are not in time. Time is in you. You are not racing toward the future. You are creating it moment by moment through the quality of presence you bring to now.
This understanding transforms your entire experience of living. You stop postponing happiness until conditions are perfect. You stop waiting for permission to be yourself. You stop delaying your dreams until you feel ready. You begin to live as if your life matters right now. You begin to act as if your choices have power right now. You begin to be as if you are already the person you are becoming. This is not positive thinking, this is authentic being. This is not pretending everything is perfect. This is finding perfection in what is. This is not denying challenges exist. This is meeting challenges from strengths rather than weakness. The ancient masters spoke of this as living in the eternal now, not because there is no past or future, but because the past and future exist only in this moment. Not because time does not matter, but because what matters most is how you inhabit time. From this place of presence, you begin to make decisions differently. You consider not just immediate consequences, but long-term implications. You think not just about personal benefit, but about collective impact. You act not just from self-interest, but from wisdom. This is how inner strength ripples out into the world. Through your transformed presence, you influence others to remember their own strengths. Through your authentic being, you give others permission to be authentic. Through your conscious choices, you contribute to the collective awakening of humanity. You begin to see that your individual transformation is not separate from global transformation, that your personal healing contributes to planetary healing, that your inner peace adds to world peace, that your conscious living supports all life. This realization brings both humility and responsibility. Humility because you understand that you are part of something much larger than yourself. Responsibility because you understand that your choices matter more than you previously realized. The strength you have built within yourself now serves not just your own well-being, but the well-being of all those whose lives you touch. The peace you have cultivated within yourself now contributes to the peace of the world. The consciousness you have developed within yourself now adds to the consciousness of humanity. This is the ultimate purpose of inner strength, not to become someone special or superior, but to become fully yourself in service to the whole. Not to escape from life, but to engage with life more skillfully. Not to avoid challenges, but to meet them with wisdom and grace. The circle is complete. The paradox you learned at the beginning now makes perfect sense. The strength you sought outside yourself was always within you. The power you thought you needed to acquire was always your birthright. The peace you hoped to find was always your true nature. Everything else has followed from this recognition. Everything else has flowed from this understanding. Everything else has emerged from this inner foundation of unshakable strengths. And now you know. Now you understand. Now you are ready to live from this truth in every moment, in every situation, in every relationship. The way is clear. The path is open. Your inner strength awaits your full embodiment.